Coleman Report Live, January 10th, Week 3 Government Shutdown Edition. Lance, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here, Bob. Put SBA back to work.
Hey, we're getting your questions. We appreciate that. We're also doing this in concert with our training. We have a ton of information to bring you up to date on. Thank you all for joining us. First of all, here's the certificate. Download that. That counts as training. Let's go right to the poll questions. Is your institution making bridge loans during the government shutdown? What are you doing, Lance?
Well, I think that you will see, we're not doing that yet, Bob, but I think you're going to see some institutions that do bridge loans prior to the government shutdown. One thing, I had a conversation with a bank yesterday. We were talking about this exact topic. I think it's really critical that if you're doing this, that in the credit memorandum for the bridge loan, it clearly states that the intent of this loan is to be financed permanently by an SBA loan subject to SBA approval. Because I don't think SBA is going to penalize anybody if you do a bridge loan and then take it out with an SBA loan. But I do think, we talk about these credit memos all the time, Bob, and information certainly a lot of information needs to be in the credit memo. But if you're doing a bridge loan to be taken out by an SBA loan, make sure there's language in it.
Lance, is that going to be considered same institution debt and we're going to have to go GP?
Not necessarily, Bob. That's it's kind of a gray. It's just like all of SBA lending. There are a lot of gray areas. I don't think it will necessarily be considered same institution debt if it's a bridge loan and there's language in the credit memo specifically that indicates that. Now, if you're not comfortable as a lender with that and wanting to process it POP, you might send a 7A questions. Send a question to 7A questions and get a response from them. Yeah. But we can't get a response from them, Bob, until the SBA opens back up.
This came up. Can we get tax transcripts?
And I'm going to let everybody answer, but this is kind of a curious question. We did get a question from a lender that said they were not able to. Ironically, I did talk to a lender yesterday that received tax transcripts yesterday. So I really don't know that there is a consistent answer across the board here. My belief, Bob, is you probably, IRS is supposedly going to 50-50. So, I don't think it's real consistent across the industry. Some are, some are not.
Number 3, SBA is approving disaster loans during the shutdown. True or false?
I'll be interested to see what the response is here.
And that is true.
Yep.
Disaster is considered essential, which is interesting. We're not going to go out down that rabbit hole, but so disaster is essential, but small business Main Street is not. So.
Well, and I'm just curious, Bob, how much of the disaster staff is not on furlough. They may be doing it, but they may be doing it with one person in each or two people in each disaster office.
And finally, this is a question from Lance's webinar last week. Do you expect the number of workouts for 7A 504 to increase at your institution in 2019?
I certainly know what I think the answer is here, Bob. I think there are a variety of factors in our economy that will cause an increase in the needed servicing and potential workouts and potential liquidation projects for SBA lenders. We've had all these rate increases and borrowers are starting to feel some cash flow pressure as a result of that. And if this government shutdown extends, that's going to start trickling in. You've got 800,000 federal government employees who are not going to get a paycheck tomorrow, and those people are not spending money. That's going to have an impact.
And they're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
They're not going to be happy. Okay, Tiff, this is a follow-up on the IRS. Lance, what do? I have the loan approval number, but I can't verify it with the IRS. Can I close the loan or not?
Well, I am of the belief, and Tiffany, I wish I could give you something hard that would say, yes, I'm of the belief the way the SOP reads, it says after a certain period of time and you make a second request and you've not gotten the transcripts, you can go ahead and move and close the loan, just showing the 4506T and that it was sent in and then a second effort, and go ahead and close it. And then when you do get the transcripts, make sure and reconcile those transcripts, put them in file with a memo.
Tiffany followed up with a note, just in. The IRS reopened a couple of days ago, and they are now processing transcripts for that. So that's now being called essential. Very good. Tiffany's our star this week. And Lance, we have a leasehold improvement loan with an option to buy the land. Are the leasehold transactions allowed if a third party still owns that property? And with SBA, go ahead, Lance.
There was a little more meat on this question. I think we have kind of a paraphrase version. It was a project where it was EPCOC and they owned the land and they're going to build a building on it. The land had a first mortgage that was on reasonable terms, but they are building a building. And I told Tiffany I'd like to see some more information about the project cost. My original response is yes, I think you can refinance that loan as long as the construction costs, are a more significant portion of the loan. So I would really like to see the project cost, but I'm of the belief, Tiffany, unless you've got a $200,000 piece of land with $50,000 worth of construction, maybe that's a struggle. But in most cases, you'd be able to go ahead and refinance that first.
Mark has a question following up from last week's discussion about you telling everyone to go in and make sure that we have all these loans worked out and make sure everything is closed out after 24 months. In SBA One, he wants you to walk through. How can he access that list?
Well, just go ahead and access SBA One. Now, I've been told some parts of ETRAN are not functional, but you can still get in SBA One. On the upper part of the opening page on the right-hand side is a Paris score. If you click on that score, it'll provide you some drop-down categories. Those drop-down categories, the ones that are blue, light blue in color, can be clicked on to drop down additional information. For instance, high-risk origination is one of the blue categories. You can click on it. It'll give you all the loans SBA considers high-risk origination. This category that Mark's asking about, in the SOP 5057-2, it said that we have to get our loans wrapped up with a recommendation for charge-off within 2 years of guaranteed purchase date. A good way to gather information about those loans that you need to consider for wrap-up is if you go into the pairs, click on the score, look at the blue, look at the list. There's one that loans that have been in liquidation for more than 3 years. Click on that list. Every loan in that list needs wrapped up or a wrap-up extension needs to be requested. So it's a great way to manage that process. And as we've talked about over and over, Bob, if you don't get loans wrapped up and recommendation for charge-off on a timely basis, your institution could potentially get an invoice from SBA.
In talking to SBA, the most common reason this occurs is the institution charges it off. It's off your books. The file's been shipped, but now we never wrapped it up with SBA. So that's why you need to go back and cross-check it, because you may have something in SBA's books that's not. And also, SBA is reasonable. You may have something in there with a $200 balance. Just send them an email and they'll wipe it out. You don't even have, just an email, right, Lance?
If you've got a small balance loan, you can send an email to the servicing center and they'll go ahead and wrap it up and charge it off for you. Another common scenario, Bob, is when you sell a loan on the secondary market, the loan goes in default, SBA buys back the guaranteed portion from the investor. You go through liquidation, you've got a little balance or, a balance left over. You charge it off as a bank and you think you're done. You still have to wrap that up and make a recommendation for charge-off.
Yeah, it's not in the SOP, Lance, but what would you consider a small amount?
If you have loans with balances of, say, $5,000 or less, that tends to be one of $5,000. But if there's a balance remaining of say 5,000, maybe even 10,000, Bob, something 10,000 or less that has been charged off at your institution, you're ready to move forward. Like I said, anything 5,000 or less, just send an email to the SBA Servicing Center, say this is the balance that's left. Please we want to wrap this up and charge it off.
Yeah, very good. I'm going to talk politics. We now have 2 new chairs of the committees. These are the 5, and Senator Rubio was elected, I believe, yesterday. These are his 5 legislation he wants to introduce. He wants to prevent SBA systems from going to China. I think we would, not go to Chinese-owned firms. I don't know the backstory of that, but I think we would agree with that. He wants to have the Small Business Credit Protection Act, which provides notification and free credit reports to small businesses, just as in consumers. Now, if you have a disaster based on disease, I guess in Florida, the Zika virus, you're eligible for economic disaster loans. He wants to expand, of course, the obligatory small businesses input in the regulatory process, and he wants to ensure that SBA's Office of Advocacy is working hard to benefit small business. So I don't see anything too controversial there unless you are Chinese.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rubio, there's nothing that would have a significant impact on a participant small business lender.
And I'm going to talk about Chairwoman Velasquez. And there's her comment. Of course, she wants the government to get reopened. And she actually was named the chair last week. And there's a couple of her legislation things. One is making sure that small business has access to federal contracts and clarity on small business participation. I don't know what that is, but I assume, again, these are non-controversial. But what I really want to talk about, Lance, is her letter on December 18th.
There's some meat to this.
Oh, and by the way, here's some stats. I'm a big stat guy. And these are her stats. It says we're losing $90 million a day. We're losing 192 jobs a day. 504, we can't acquire real estate. And we're losing 117 loans for $100 million a week on that. Previous shutdown data indicates on a daily basis, a shutdown caused small firms to lose almost 7,000 contracts worth $300 million. And of course, there's a lot of people who aren't going to get paid tomorrow. So
I think people don't always. Now, the federal government employees historically have always gotten paid after the shutdown ends. But the problem that you run into is if this extends and they miss a few paychecks, they're going to have to make some important decisions. And decision 1 is to pay your rent or your house payment. Decision 2 is to pay your utility bills and buy groceries. Spending at small businesses is going to be impacted by this significantly.
They're not going to go out. They're not going to go to McDonald's. They're not going to go to restaurants. They're not going to drive. I mean, it's at some point in time, it will get serious. Lance and I have no crystal ball. We all read the same newspapers. I assume cooler heads will prevail. They're going to have to. I think once all these people miss their paycheck tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of screaming. So
one of the things, this is a discussion I had with somebody yesterday. We were talking about food stamps. Right now, it appears that food stamps are okay. But what if this extended and eventually food stamps got cut off? I mean, Walmart, large grocery companies.
Yeah, it's not going to go that far.
No, I don't. But it could. Bobby, they talked about months. If it went months, there would be far-reaching impacts.
I would predict that is a posturing statement.
I think so too.
Hey, this is what I want to talk about. On December 18th, and it is your dashboard if you want to get into the weeds, Congresswoman Velasquez sent a letter to SBA Administrator McMahon commenting on the proposed rule change, commenting on personal resource tests, credit elsewhere. And she says that her statement was that we need to have a personal resource test. She's not advocating any particular test, but she wants it changed from the entire project to just the 7A loan amount. Lance, what's your opinion about that?
I mean, it's not going to have a huge impact on projects. It'll actually lower the equity injection. Normally, we look at a total project cost when determining equity injection. She's saying we should just look at the loan amount. Yep. But quite frankly, Bob, it shows that they don't completely understand SBA lending. The loans will be in better shape if we continue to use total project versus loan amount. But it's not going to have a huge impact.
This is an interesting position. I think it's interesting. She says, of course, we don't want predatory fees, but with respect to the caps, remember there's several projects out there on limiting agent fees, limiting loan service provider fees, limiting loan packaging fees. And her recommendation is to get rid of the caps.
She's basically indicating that she doesn't think arbitrary caps set by SBA on agent fees is something that she supports. Now, I don't know that that's going to change. And Bob, as long as they continue to require documentation on the activities involved in packaging, I don't think you're going to see fees above and beyond the current caps that are in place. But you might. And guys, I know we all look at that cap and say there'll never be a fee like that. But I've actually reviewed SBA loans from periods prior to having a cap on fees. And I've seen an SBA loan where there was a BDO fee exceeding $100,000.
Yeah, and then it falls back to the prudent lending standard. And I think that's what the industry should advocate, and let the lenders determine what's prudent and not have SBA put these arbitrary fees. But we'll see what happens when the rules come out. Velasquez is very influential. She manages into the weeds on these programs. Go to the next slide, Joseph. And Lance, your favorite, she is bound and determined that we're not going to have poultry lending.
Yeah, she talked about affiliation in her comments, and if you can weed through the information, she basically is saying she does not support poultry lending with SBA. No,
she's saying that they are ineligible.
Yes.
that's more than support. And now this is sort of a concern. While I acknowledge the affiliation component of this proposed rule as a first good step, SBA can and should go a step further to protect powerless borrowers in all industries, which could be code for franchises. I'm not going to fearmonger or whatever, but when you read her letter, she really wants to go after the poultry lenders. She's not going to go after franchise lending, I don't believe.
I don't think so either, Bob. But poultry lending's been a topic of conversation now for the last 18 months. So her saying she's not in support that poultry farms are not eligible really is not overly significant. But I do think it brings another level of support to SBA discontinuing poultry lending.
Well, the backstory is there's a major SBA lender who made a big push in that, and that upset the backstory to upset a bank out of Louisiana. David Vitter was the chair. That bank president complained to Vitter, and Vitter went after it, and she picked up the mantle. And the other thing she's saying is in that letter, look, this should be under USDA and shouldn't be under SBA. So anyway, that's some backstory. NFIB is predicting a little slowdown on Optimism. Again, these are still great numbers, but we are not where we were a year ago, where every time we put up these numbers, Lance, they said, hey, we're better than last month, we're better than last month, we're better than last month. Now we're saying it's still a great number, and small business is still optimistic, but that optimism is slowing a bit.
Well, there are enough different things going on in our economy, Bob, that, I can see where that optimism would slow, but that's the nature of small business owners, the nature of entrepreneurs are to be optimistic. So, these numbers are important. If small business owners are losing their enthusiasm, that's significant.
Well, they're not losing their enthusiasm.
Or at least slowing down.
Yeah, it's plateauing. I think that's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple of things. We have a new website now called SBAsecondarymarket.com. There's your quotes for where we are in 7A as well as 504. And if you're not on that list, make sure you get on that list. We do that now weekly. Also, please, I'm giving a push for our compensation reports. If you fill it out, you get a free copy. And we're going to keep that open for another couple weeks. And those are all the different categories. And if you follow one of those and you want to know where you rate in compensation, give us the information. And Lance, we have, actually, Joseph, we have a typo. Next week, we're doing our child care webinar. And Lance, on January 23rd, you're doing a repeat on your SBA loan portfolio servicing actions that we got to do this year.
Yeah, and this is an important seminar because, again, I do think that 2019, we're going to see more small business borrowers that are stressed, and we need to know how to take care of those small business entities.
And then we're going to do an assisted living facility webinar, and we got some other stuff that we're doing. Of course, Lance's loan closing course, award-winning loan closing course. We're starting it up again this week and next week, so take advantage of that. Hey, record numbers today. I hope we gave you solid information about what's going on. Hopefully this situation gets resolved next week, and hopefully next week, Lance, we can be talking about backlogs and how to sort all that out.
I hope so, Bob, and I really think that the government shutdown should end soon.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.